I'm sitting here with Mike Connery, the president of OTB, and we're at the Teletheater, betting horses and having a great time. Why don't you come down and join us?
And Funny Side, who dropped back to third on the far turn, is coming again down to the final 16th. Newfoundland, Funny Side fights his way to the lead.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with my colleague Mike Veach, the racing columnist with the Saratogian, I'm Mark Casano, welcoming you to this morning's program, live from here at the Albany Teletheater at 711 Central Avenue. Well, we've got a big 90 minutes in front of us, a number of races to look back at, all with Breeders' Cup implications. We will welcome in two special guests for you over the next hour and a half. For right now, let's get to the entire lineup for this morning's program. During our topical discussion, we will talk about yet another retirement, as well as a major announcement from yesterday from the New York Racing Association. We'll bring you right up to date on all the stakes action, including three which were run yesterday. The Alcibiades in the Phoenix at Keeneland, as well as the Meadowlands Cup last evening in New Jersey. We'll take a look at our feature race of the week past, the Jockey Club Cup, and then we'll welcome in our first special guest, Mr. Jack Knowlton, the managing partner of Saratoga Stable. Our major stakes review, coast to coast, as I mentioned, all with Breeders' Cup implications, including some terrific performances. And then a bit later on, we'll welcome in our second special guest, Mr. Ken McPeek, the trainer of Diamond Isle, a little-known 2-year-old colt who I kind of like, and he'll be contesting the Breeders' Futurity later this afternoon at Keeneland. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us this morning. And the opinions expressed on this morning's program are those of Mike Veach and Mark Casano, and do not necessarily reflect those of Capital District. Off Track Betting. Good morning, partner.
Morning, Mark.
How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you.
You had a good week?
Had a tough week in Happy Land. So, yeah, it was a great week to be free.
You know,
so
I'm getting,
I'm not trying to push the point, but I
getting,
worked hard this summer.
I'm getting a little concerned because even our associate producer, Julie Hoxie, is now taking her time off going north, which I don't understand what's going on, but everybody's going north. She went north to Canoe. You go north.
If you had listened to the gentleman who spoke to us after the show last week and you tried it yourself, you would too. I mean, the wilderness for you is Sagamore. I understand that.
That's about as much wilderness as I want. All right, we've got a big show in front of us live from here at the Albany Teletheater. And speaking of the Teletheater, a number of happenings here, beginning with the NFL football package here at the Teletheater. Each and every Sunday, if you're an NFL fan, this is the place to be. Every game, and if you're a fan of those teams that aren't shown on normal network television, come here to the Teletheater. You will be able to see them each and every Sunday, the NFL football package. And we want to tell you that we will be here several more Saturdays during this month as Down the Stretch continues its road trip. We'll be here in 2 weeks on the 23rd, our regular time, 10 to 11:30, as well as Breeders' Cup morning, October 30th, beginning at 9:30. And if you haven't gotten your reservations yet for Breeders' Cup Day, why don't you do it this afternoon? Call Maureen here at the Teletheater at 518-438-0127. And the boys from Track Facts, Tom Amello and Nick Kling, will be here tomorrow afternoon with a seminar beginning at about 1 o'clock upstairs here in the Capitol Room at the Albany Teletheater. So join Tom and Nick tomorrow as well as October 24th for Track Facts Live seminars. Major news yesterday from the New York Racing Association. Barry Schwartz, the chairman of the Board of Trustees, announced yesterday he is stepping down from that position at the end of the year. Mr. Schwartz has been the chairman for 4 years, and he cited an excessive workload. Partner, I think it's very fair to say more than he ever expected in the face of the federal indictment that NYRA's been under. It's certainly not surprising. been spending more time than he originally expected. This shouldn't come as a major surprise.
It shouldn't come as a surprise, Mark, nor should it come, I think, in any way should it indicate that this is in some way another sad thing for the New York Racing Association. Barry was dropping signals for a long time about not hanging on much longer. I spent a good deal of time with him this past April. He was very excited about being active at the horse sales again. He did it again this fall at Keeneland. And he gave them, 2 months or so to round up a successor. But Barry was tired. He felt that he had weathered about as big a storm as you could weather. He feels that he's left NYRA better than when he found it. I tend to agree with that. Could have been an awfully difficult job. But again, I emphasize it shouldn't be looked at as this is another body blow for NYRA, although it does come on the heels of Tim Smith not taking the job, one of the jobs that Barry held. But I think that Barry deserves a real big pat on the back for gutting out some real tough times. And despite the fact that he took you and me by surprise, and some of the racing public as well, Barry never did not let you know where he felt on an issue, and I respect him for that.
The New York Racing Association has been without a president for a good year now, and now at the end of the year it will be without a board chairman. This is the biggest operation in North America.
It is, yeah.
They've got to get things in place here pretty quick. Okay, one letter to read from Lou and Colette from down in Old Chatham. Lou, thank you very much. Said, missed your great shows the month of September as we were on vacation across the sea. France, to be exact. Rented a house near a small town, had a great time, talked about racing overseas, and one of the things that Lou noted was that each of the races overseas is by the time, in other words, it's the 245 at Newmarket or the 310 at Salisbury, not the 6th at Newmarket, but the 245 at Newmarket. And Lou brought up a very interesting point. They had 3 meets running at the same time.
Yes.
But the races never overlapped.
Well,
they were all spaced out. Do they have an NTRA in Europe?
Well, I appreciate what Lou is saying, and that we wish that we could have that in the United States. But I will sort of throw a counterpoint out here. We're racing in 4 time zones with the biggest product in the world, and I understand what he's saying, but it's a much bigger product. But it would be nice if we could start identifying things in that manner. But to me, it seems to be almost impossible, Mark.
Well,
but it's a good thought.
We've got Belmont and Keeneland this afternoon.
That's
both having great cards
the
of racing.
2 majors should be able to agree
Let's
on
hope
things
they
that I
don't
agree
overlap
with.
this
Yes.
afternoon. Lou, thank you so much for your note. And for those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, here are the ways in which you can do that. Through the United States Postal Service Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, care of Capital District OTB, 510 Smith in Schenectady, 12305, or the most popular way, electronically at OTB TV at capitalotb.com. Ever since you retired last year, this started like
Stop teaching? I don't know if we're retired. I stopped teaching.
Please. Last week in the topical discussion, we talked about 2 retirements, and this morning, yet another retirement. Seattle Fitz, shown here winning the Brooklyn earlier this year, has been retired. Owned by the West Point Stable and trained by Kieran McLaughlin, Seattle Fitz was retired due to an ankle injury. He captured 6 of 21 starts, nearly 600,000, and I would say he was at his very, very best here in defeating Dynaver and basically running a hole in the win that day.
He really did. It was a phenomenal time, mile and 33 and change, and when he was good, he really was terrific. I'm sorry he can't go on with it. I'm sorry we didn't see the best of him this summer as well, because I know West Point was counting on that, but good luck to him.
And I don't know, I guess I'd classify this as a retirement of sorts this morning. The announcement from jockey Shane Sellers that he will not ride anymore until the industry creates a catastrophic insurance package for riders. Shane says, I'm not going to put my kids in jeopardy, their futures. Shane Sellers has been riding for 22 years. He's ridden more than 4,000 winners. His mounts have earned in excess of $123 million. Got to give Shane Sellers credit.
Yes, I do.
He has stepped to the forefront on a number of issues which have put him in on the other side of the issues with horsemen, with owners. But he stepped out, he spoke in his mind, but he says until we get this catastrophic insurance policy, I'm not riding anymore.
Good going, Shane. I congratulate him on that. I really do.
Remember a couple of years ago, Shane Sellers had to go to the sidelines because of the serious knee problems. So Shane Sellers, I guess to some degree, has
semi-retired.
Okay, we're up to our first break on this morning's edition of Down the Stretch here live from the Albany Teletheater. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we will take a look at our Down the Stretch feature race of the week past, the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and welcome in special guest number 1, Mr. Jack Knowlton. But as we go to this break, last evening at the Meadowlands Cup, the first 2 finishers likely to go to the Breeders' Cup. The only question, which races will they run in? So we'll take a look at the Meadowlands Cup going to the break, and Michael and I will be back to begin our long stakes recap right after these messages.
Unforgettable Max is second, and here comes Gygestar, who's gaining ground, being pushed along by Joe Bravo third, and Dynevor is underway toward the inside. Will have to find a way through as they straighten away in the lane. Balto Star has it by a length and a half. Gygestar is second. Dynevor on the outside is third, and down the stretch they come, and Balto Star is digging in, but here comes Dynevor on the outside, gobbling up ground with every stride. Balto Star on the rail, Dynevor on the outside. Balto Star nails it by half a length. Dynevor on the outside was second, at about 2.5 back. It was Gygestar third.
This is the OTB Television Network.
We tried telling you nicely.
Get with the program.
Then we got a little bolder.
Get with the program.
Now we're practically shouting.
Get with the program. Know your brand.
And here are some of the reasons why. New York Breds race for purses and incentives exceeding $40 million. New York Bred yearling prices have risen significantly, bucking the national trend. The New York Stallion Stakes Series has expanded to 8 races worth a combined $1.25 million. New York Bred restricted stakes have grown from $75,000 to $100,000 at both Belmont and Saratoga. And they're doing okay in open company.
And the Betsy Gelding Funny Side has won the 129th Kentucky Derby.
Isn't it time for you to get with the program, the New York Breeding and Racing Program?
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark Asano. The Meadowlands Cup goes to Balto Star for Todd Pletcher and John Velasquez over Dynevor. A couple of interesting things here. Dynevor ran second in last year's Meadowlands Cup, went on to run third in the Breeders' Cup Classic. This is the easy part. He'll likely go back to the Breeders' Cup Classic. But Balto Star, will he go to the Classic, where Pletcher's got Newfoundland, or will he go back to the turf? Because, ladies and gentlemen, if I'm not mistaken, the last time Balto Star went turf to dirt, or I'm sorry, dirt to turf, he won the United Nations.
Well, I was waiting for you to tell me when that happened. It has to be a couple of years. And if you tuned in during the running of the race, you would have figured out, you know, gosh, Balto Star, isn't he usually in front? Instead, he got a nice contending position. He's earned over $2.5 million with 12 victories. You just got to like this old guy. Dynevor did find his path. He just really ran out of real estate at the end of the Meadowlands Cup. But how can you not be fond of this guy? I mean, he really is getting into my system.
And, you know, Balto Star likes 3-turn configurations on grass. So we'll have to see. Todd's got a decision to make. It's my opinion he's leaning, even though he won the Meadowlands Cup on dirt, it's my opinion he's leaning ever so slightly to grass. All right, the Down the Stretch feature race from the week past, the $1 million Jockey Club Gold Cup, where number 2, Love of Money, was the slight favorite at 5-2. This was one of the 2 3-year-olds in the race, coming off a big one in the Pennsylvania Derby. Also at 5-2, from the far outside post, not a great spot to be starting on that dog leg, is Funny Side, a bang-up third in the Suburban in his last start at Belmont Park, a wide second in the Saratoga Breeders' Cup. In his latest start, he's reunited with Jose Santos, and Jose didn't fool around at the beginning. When Domestic Dispute did not go after Love of Money, Jose sent Funny Side up after Love of Money. He didn't want him to get away. Early fractions, fairly conservative. But you folks are going to watch shortly when Newfoundland ranges up outside of Funny Side and really kind of puts him in a jackpot, puts him between horses. Jose Santos is going to make a decision that a lot of people questioned originally. Going to take Funny Side back off the pace. But, partner, it's a decision which I think led to a victory in the Jockey Club Gold Cup.
Mark, I have no hesitation in saying that this story that we're watching right now, this race is about Jose Santos, period. I've said on this show many times that to me there is an edge to riding Funny Side, that Jose Santos has discovered that edge. I think the Preakness last year was a prime example. But here we have a situation with a guy who was loaded with powerful, nervous energy. He gets his position from the outside post position going into that short run into the first turn of the Jockey Club Gold Cup. A lot of people are saying, oh, gee, look at this. In fact, the announcer said he's dropping back. I very seldom argue with Tom Durkin, who's the best of the best. As far as I'm concerned, he knows his horse after the half in 47-3. I think those two went faster, and Jose simply held his position and held his ground and made a beautifully timed move to come through here. And by the way, look at how straight Funny Side performs between horses under the stick of Jose Santos. I'll say it 100 times. The Jockey Club Gold Cup of 2004, left and right, is Jose Santos' really flawless slide and not panicking when those horses ranged up on the outside. I do not think Funny Side backed up. I think he kept his stride and kept his ground, and when Jose called on him, he had what was necessary at the end. I thought it was a brilliant, brilliant job of race riding.
Jose did not want to be stuck between rivals for the last 5 furlongs. That is just not the spot to be, so he eased them back. Jose's got so much confidence in Funny Side.
Yeah.
And, you know, right up front, we know this wasn't the greatest renewal in history of the Jockey Club Gold Cup. But one of the things about Funny Side is when you load him in the gate, he gives you everything he has.
It's true.
You know, when we quantify whatever he has, that might not be to the same level as a Pleasantly Perfect or a Go Zapper. But what an advantage it is to be able to put a horse in a gate. You know he's going to give you everything he has, and Jose rides him with a tremendous amount of confidence. You saw the Cliff's Edge range up on the turn, threatening. Partner, it's not like the Cliff's Edge to make that run and then hang. We found out career-ending injury.
Absolutely, and you know, the last 3 or 4 starts, we have watched him kind of do the same thing. I accept the Dwyer from that performance, and maybe this is something that was just growing and budding, and it came to the fore in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. We're going to miss him very much. As far as Funny Side, do you think he likes Belmont? 402 in 7 starts. He wins his $3 million race. He's over $3 million. Mark is right. When they open the latch, this guy gives it his all. Gonna miss Funny Side, but it was a terrific, gonna miss the Cliff's Edge, a terrific performance by the winner.
So with that victory, Funny Side now over $1 million this year and $3 million in career earnings. Jack Knowlton is the managing partner of Saratoga Stable, the owners of Funny Side. And Jack and Gus Williams, one of the most flamboyant owner of Funny Side, decided to attend the Keeneland races this weekend. So before they left, Jack stopped down to the studio, and we had a chat about Funny Side, the Jockey Club Gold Cup, reflections on the 2004 season, and a look ahead to the 2004 Breeders' Cup Classic. So, ladies and gentlemen, the managing partner of Saratoga Stable, Mr. Jack Knowlton. Jack, welcome back to Down the Stretch, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be invited back.
Jack, aside from the obvious, the $600,000 in purse monies won, what were the most rewarding things about Funny Side winning the Jockey Club Gold Cup?
Well, I think it was really somewhat of a vindication. You know, a lot of people, I think, lost faith in his ability. Yeah, he was a great 3-year-old, particularly in the springtime. Things kind of went backward in the fall after the tough campaign. And, you know, this year he certainly had, by what just about anybody would measure, a successful campaign. You know, a Grade 3 stakes win, a couple of seconds in big races and thirds in the stakes. Off the board only once in the Met Mile, which probably wasn't, you know, the type of race he really likes. And here we are coming up to the Jockey Gold Cup, and I think in our mind, and certainly in Barclay's mind, if he was going to go on this year to get back to the Breeders' Cup, he had to win here, and he got it done.
Let me ask you to be very frank with our audience. I'd like you to grade his 2004 season. I'm going to ask you to give him 2 grades. Prior to the Jockey Club Gold Cup and following his victory in the Jockey Club Gold Cup.
Well, I would say probably a B, maybe before this race, and you know, now that that he's won a Grade 1 and arguably, you know, one of the most prestigious races for older horses in the country, he goes up to an A, and he's still got a chance to get an A+.
Jack, did winning the Gold Cup, if we can rank it, rank third behind the Derby and the Preakness?
Almost, I think it may rank second to the Derby. You know, clearly the Preakness was big, but we went into the Preakness, I think, expecting that we were going to win, very, very highly confident we were going to win. And this race, in a sense, as you look back, if we'd have won the Triple Crown, obviously the Preakness would have been, you know, more important than it ended up being. This race gave us an opportunity to go back to the biggest race in America, the Breeders' Cup Classic, and for that reason, you know, it's huge. And I think, you know, for Funnyside's reputation, for his resume, when people look back, hopefully they won't start looking back at him for a few years because he's going to be running for a while. You know, this is one of the marquee races in America, and you know, we would still like to get on that list of great geldings, and you know, maybe even beyond that. And this is certainly a big help in any consideration down the road.
You gave Funnyside a grade of B prior to the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Did he need to win a race like that to vindicate himself as a 4-year-old?
Well, in a sense, I think yes. In another sense, no. If you looked at the record this year, he's been running almost exclusively in Grade 1, Grade 2, and Grade 3 events. He had one allowance race in Florida to open the year, and he's only been off the board once. I mean, you know, 7 out of 8 races, first, second, or third against some of the toughest horses in the country, and I mean, not well beaten. I mean, he got beat by a head in the Mascap, a Grade 2 $500,000 race. He got beat by a nose by Newfoundland and a neck by Peace Rules in the Suburban in a race that went in under 2 minutes. So I think, you know, you look at those 2 races, had he won those 2 races, you know, or either one of them probably, he might have had an A already. But he needed this one to get back, I think, you know, in most people's consideration as one of the marquee horses still out there.
Well, let's take a look at the Jockey Club Gold Cup, and at Belmont Park at 1.25 miles off the dog leg. The side post position is not the place to be. You know, Jack, you're a golfer. You know from the inside post here, you can basically cut the dog leg from the outside. Jose had to send him early here a bit so that love of money did not get away from him. Tell our audience your thoughts as the Jockey Club Gold Cup unfolded.
Well, Barkley was extremely concerned about that. I you know, saw him down at Belmont right after they drew the post positions and asked him how he liked the post. And I mean, he was just, Barkley's normally somewhat negative. He was very negative about that. Yes. So, you know, that was a concern. But Jose went into this race with just extreme confidence. I don't think I've ever seen him more confident than he was. Talked to him in the paddock, and he wanted to make sure that Love for Money wasn't going to have an easy trip and be out there all by himself. He wanted him to realize that somebody was going to be at his throat, and it wasn't going to be a walk in the park like it was against the 3-year-olds in Philadelphia. So he got him up, and you know, Funnyside is not an easy horse to rate. I think, you know, one of the top jockeys in America, Edgar Prado, had a difficult time at Saratoga.
Absolutely.
And Jose, I think, you know, here is, you know, just taking it, you know, kind of easy with Funnyside, but Funnyside's always going to be up near the pace. And that's one of the nice things, you know, that he's always in the race. The question becomes, you know, when the running comes, is he going to be good enough? Now, right here, the Saratoga crew is kind of our hearts and our throats a little bit, and Tom Durkin is saying that, you know, Funnyside's stopping, and you're saying, you know, what's going on? This is not what we expected. And then the excitement begins. He begins to rally, and you know, we hear the call, and we're looking down the track, and here comes Funnyside. And you know, he's got a horse on either side of him, which is never the place you really want to be. We got caught there in the Mascap, and you know, ended up second best. It could have been third best. I think we were nose the best second. But here we are, the excitement. You know, we're thinking Kentucky Derby all over again. Here's Gutsy Gelding. Tom Durkin's doing the call, and you know, we've won a $31 million race.
And you've got to give Jose an awful lot of credit, because when Newfoundland makes the early move down the backstretch outside of him and puts you in a jackpot, basically, Jose doesn't want to be between horses for the last 3/4 of a mile. That, I think, Jack, turned out to be the winning move when he eased him back off love of money in Newfoundland.
Couldn't agree more. You know, Jose knows this horse. This is the 18th time in 20 races that he's been on the horse. And as I said, you know, I think if you didn't have the kind of extreme confidence that he indicated he had before the race, you wouldn't have dared make that move. And he made it, as you say, it turned out to be the winning move. And we're just happy to have him back and, you know, ride him in a Breeders' Cup. That was certainly one of the, you know, issues that we had last year. There were a lot of issues around his performance in the Breeders' Cup last year, but Jose wasn't on him. And this year we've got the full team back.
Well, fair to say that he's certainly coming to the 2004 Breeders' Cup Classic in far better shape than he was last year.
Yeah, I think there's no question. And, you know, if I can believe what the NTRA people, the Breeders' Cup people, and the Texas folks tell us, we're not going to have 101 degrees down there, and it's not going to be smoky in Texas. So, you know, that was clearly one of the concerns. We're not coming off an 83-day layoff as we were last year. That's never easy. History certainly has told us that. And we don't have a substitute jockey on him. So, you know, we feel real positive. It's obviously a situation where you're going against some very, very talented horses. Some of whom have won at a mile and a quarter. Pleasantly Perfect is certainly a legitimate favorite, one would think. But, you know, you go beyond that, and I think that there are a lot of questions marks. Ghost Zapper obviously is a very fast, talented horse. He hasn't proven yet that he can get the mile and a quarter. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. Roses in May, the same thing. Has reeled off a number of, you know, very impressive races. Yet to go a mile and a quarter. So we'll see. I think, you know, Funnyside proved that he deserved a chance, and we're looking forward to going there and giving him that chance.
How did he come out of the Jockey Club Gold Cup?
Came out of the race great. Talked to Barkley after the race the next day, again this morning, and, you know, everything is fine. Making plans on getting him down there the 27th. So I think we'll be ready to go. Just now you kind of knock on wood and you want to keep him healthy and happy for another 3 weeks and you know, go to the big dance.
I don't know if I should use the term excited with Barkley, but is Barkley somewhat excited about going to the Classic?
Yeah, I think Barkley this time around it's going to be a lot easier. You know, last year it was kind of a last-minute decision, and I think, you know, everybody that was involved with Funnyside understood that you were going up against a lot to try and be successful last year. This year, I think we feel he's definitely proven that he belongs, and you know, there've been a lot of defections. Let's be honest. Yeah. We don't have you know, a Medaglia d'Oro. We don't have a Peace Rules. I mean, there are a lot of, you know, very good racehorses that have fallen by the wayside this year, and it's, you know, part of this race is who's left standing. And I think I can say, you know, based upon his last race and really the way he's been all year, I mean, Funnyside's health and soundness, fortunately, have been, you know, very, very good, and that's what you need going into a race like this.
Well, it was a kind of a Hollywood script in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, a Hollywood ending, and I'll ask you this, on the heels of a very successful Seabiscuit movie, will we be seeing a Funnyside movie? What's in the works?
Well, we're still having discussions with people from TNT. They have taken an option on the book, and we've had a producer and a screenwriter come to Saratoga and up to Sackett's Harbor. Right now, the screenwriter is doing his outline for what the script would be for a made-for-TV movie, and from what we're hearing, the TNP people are pretty excited about it, and certainly I think the win the other day can't do anything but help that.
Who's going to play Jack Knowlton? Is it Mel Gibson part?
Well, we don't know. One thing with made-for-TV movies, they aren't those big-budget, big-screen movies, but you know, it would be fun. I mean, you know, never did we think any of this would happen. Certainly not winning a Kentucky Derby, not having a book, and now if we could do a movie, that'd kind of be icing on the cake. But fortunately, Funnyside's still on the racetrack, and you know, he's only 4 this year. You know, we've been in 2 Breeders' Cup Classics, assuming that that all goes well. And you know, from everything Barkley tells me, these horses really don't hit their physical peak until they're 5. And you look at some of the performances of 6-year-olds this year. Evening Attire, his race up at Saratoga, Pleasantly Perfect, winning in Dubai. if we can keep them together, we could have fun for at least a couple more years.
We need more geldings. That's what we need. Jack, congratulations on the big win in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. It truly was exciting. And all the best 3 weeks down the road at Lone Star in the Breeders' Cup Classic. And we hope to speak with you again very, very soon.
Great. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's always great to come on the show. I know Funny Side's got a great following in the Capital District, and all of the OTBs should be rocking and rolling on Breeders' Cup Day, particularly with Funny Side in the Classic.
Should be a lot of fun. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Jack Knowlton, ladies and gentlemen. In 2003, with Funny Side in the Breeders' Cup Classic, in my opinion, he had zero realistic chance. I'll never forget this. NBC in the post-parade showed the current odds, and he was 9-2. And it was quite possibly, you know, the worst 9-2 shot. I just gave him zero realistic chance.
So did I.
This year, he's coming into the race the way you want a horse to come into a race. He is consistent. You have to give him credit. He runs hard all the time. He's got a legitimate chance to run well in 3 weeks.
I think he does because of his tactical speed he does, and whereas a lot of people would say, you know, gee, you know, this is for a horse in the Grade 1, the Classic for $4 million. This even is too close. As far as I'm concerned with Funny Side, he needs something to take the edge off, and a race like this sets him up perfectly. So that to me is I do agree with you. He's got a serious chance.
So Funny Side, as well as Newfoundland, on their way to the Breeders' Cup Classic, and we're going to show you several more races now that may have some Classic implications, beginning with the Hawthorne Gold Cup, and sitting second on the outside is the heavy favorite Perfect Drift. But rallying from the far back on the far left of your screen is the eventual winner, Free for Internet, in Greta Kunzweiler. Pat Day can't make the front too early with Perfect Drift because he'll stop running. Free for Internet had all the momentum. Perfect Drift did not respond, and Free for Internet posts a stunning upset in the Hawthorne Gold Cup.
I don't know what to say about poor Murray. He's 0 for 7 this year. Gave 9 to the winner. The winner's coming off a turf race at Mountaineer Park. We saw him upset the Kelso last year.
That's right.
21 to 1.
That's right.
But Mark made an interesting point in discussion about this, that he thinks Perfect Drift is a very, very difficult horse to train and get to move at the right time. I can't fault the jockey, but I can imagine that Murray Johnson is probably faulting everybody around for not getting that win yet this year. And he's a seriously good horse, but what on earth do you do?
Perfect Drift, in my opinion, is the Ferdinand of 2004, not from the standpoint of not having won, but Ferdinand, Charlie Whittingham, and Bill Shoemaker both told me that he was the hardest horse to train and the hardest horse to ride, because you couldn't make the front too early with Ferdinand or he'd stop running. And that's the way it is with Perfect Drift. And Perfect Drift has got to be the finest non-winner in North America. Non-winner as far as 2004 goes. And you know what? I think he's dangerous in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but he's a very, very difficult horse to ride. Finally, out in Southern California at Santa Anita, the running of the Goodwood, and inside is Lundy's Liability, and outside is Total Impact, and they controlled the pace throughout. Sitting third inside in behind is Super Blitz, who's going to have some trouble. But Lundy's Liability, his first start since playing the March 27th UAE Derby, he's going to hold on for Bobby Frankel, who is one of the greatest at bringing horses back off the house.
Absolutely, and probably showed a little of his greenness going into that turn by shaking his head to the left, but he's 4 for 5 lifetime, and who knows what his future is. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's classic bound. Is that right?
I don't think
he's
so
headed
at this
that way,
point.
Mark. Yeah.
And Laura Desaru, the trainer of Total Impact, says she doesn't want to have anything to do with Pleasantly Perfect. Super Blitz, believe it or not, the troubled third, or somewhat troubled third, may come out of this race and go to the Classic. But the Goodwood, you know, while it was an exciting race, not to say, be pretty fair about this, not one of the finer editions of the Goodwood.
Yes.
All right, we're up to our next break on this morning's edition of Down the Stretch, live from here at the Albany Teletheater at 711 Central Avenue. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, more stakes, and we're going to move to the proper surface. We're going to begin on the proper surface as we go to this break, as we take a look at the Arc de Triomphe. A couple of horses I want you to watch. Bago. Bago is in dark blue silks with the light blue crosses. That's the Niarchos family colors. Bago is destined for the Breeders' Cup Classic. And we Ouija Board, the 3-year-old filly who I like so very much. Ouija Board is toward the back of the pack in the black silks with a white cap. If they decide to send Ouija Board, it will be for the filly and mare turf. So pay attention to both Bago and Ouija Board, and by the way, they were both part of the mutual field.
I remember.
Which I discussed last week.
I remember.
So we'll take a look at the Arc de Triomphe going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with much more right after these messages.
But Northlight and Tap Dance City begin the race for home. They've gone 3 lengths ahead now as they turn into the straight. Prospect Park is second. Cherry is going well in fourth on the inside of Mammal. Execute behind this from Grey Swallow. Valix here the outside, then Latisse and Bago. Heading with a little over 400 to go. Northlight in front. Leads from Cherry Mix, who's through into second place. Christoph Sumin on Cherry Mix, so burst clear in the arc now. Bago's into second. Northlight behind this, then Mammal. Ouija Board coming from the back. Valley Enchanté on the outside. Cherry Mix in front. Bago begins to cut him down. Ouija Board's moved into third. Into the final strides. Bago is going to redeem his reputation with an arc win. Cherry Mix was second. Ouija Board in third. It's tight for fourth. Acropolis came home strongly to join Northlight, who's battling on well, but it is Bago who's won the arc.
This is the Off Track Betting Television Network.
This year, many thoroughbreds, no longer able to compete, will join the ranks of racing's homeless. Since 1982, the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and its supporters have been providing help and hope for those in need, creating opportunities where once there were none. The TRF, together with the racing industry, is meeting the challenge, taking care of their own. Yesterday's innovative concepts, combining the TRF's rescue mission with educational and rehabilitation goals, have become today's life-saving success stories and a track record of unsurpassed growth. Safely retired thoroughbreds are now enjoying second careers, bringing responsibility, healing, and purpose to the lives of those who need it most. With your help, we can continue our saving mission, ensuring many more horses the welcome home they so richly deserve.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch. Mike Veach to my left, I'm Mark Asano. Bago for Jonathan Peace and Thierry Gelée over Cherry Mix and Ouija Board. Bago, an outstanding son of Najwan, has run 9 times with 7 victories and 2/3. The one thing he's never done is dirt.
Well,
and he's going to try dirt for the first time in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Son of an Epsom Derby winner, but was kind of looking at his pedigree to hope to find some strain that we could count on. And you'd be surprised who Mom is a half-sister to.
Who might that be?
A very popular New York horse called Snake Mountain.
Oh,
so
sure.
it's in there.
How about that?
So maybe it'll happen.
So Bago looking toward the Breeders' Cup Classic, and I am hoping that Ouija Board, who will need to be supplemented for 90,000, the 90,000 is no problem for these people. If they bring Ouija Board and she draws a decent post position, I don't have the faintest idea how they're going to get anywhere near her. This is a top quality 3-year-old filly. All right, we continue on the proper surface in New York, and I personally think this was the performance of the weekend in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic. Second on the outside is the favorite Magistretti, but fourth on the outside is the eventual winner, Kitten's Joy. He is a 3-year-old facing his elders for the first time. He is trying 1.5 miles for the first time. Those proved to be absolutely no problems. Edgar Prado on Magistretti, galloping to the front, had to be ultra confident. But Johnny Velasquez is sitting on a turbine who's going to throw a final quarter of 22 and 3, going 1.5 miles, and partner, the 3-year-old, is going to drown his elders.
It's awfully scary stuff because I am sure that Prado, when he makes what he thinks is a very, very shrewd move, and he knows how Magistretti can finish, that he's got this thing put away, and instead this Learjet sweeps by on the outside, and this is the performance of the week, and it's amazing to think a horse can look like this at the end of 1.5 miles, fitting in elders for the first time. Nonetheless, Kitten's Joy, who I wrote, in my opinion, has entered contention for Horse of the Year because of this particular performance. He won 8 of his last 9, Mark, firm and yielding, 6 different tracks, 2 straight Grade 1s. Only the 7th 3-year-old to win this race, and to me, he reminds me in a remarkable way of a great 3-year-old turf horse called Manila of about 20 years ago, who had the very same pattern of a campaign, won the Turf Classic, and I will never forget a statistic by Manila. When he won the United Nations in the summer of a 3-year-old year on a yielding turf course, he ran the United Nations faster than the Preakness won on dirt that year. An incredible 3-year-old. This guy reminds me of him, and I think he's in the thick of it.
Tremendous, tremendous performance. Now, there was no portable rail up on that turf course, so we have to assume that the teletimer was accurate. Now, granted, this was a European-style race. I think they went 3/4 of a mile in 17, so they were just galloping in front. But I'll tell you what, to go 1.5 miles for your first time on a less than firm turf course and turn in a final quarter of 22 and 3, Prado was riding Magistretti. He must have been the most surprised person at Belmont Park that afternoon, because turning for home, he had to be, you know, basically counting his money, and here comes Kitten's Joy in a superb effort. Kickin' Chris came on the racetrack. Kickin' Chris, who was placed first in the Arlington Million, came on the racetrack in front bandages and did not run well at all. But the first 2 finishers, Kitten's Joy and Magistretti, on to the Breeders' Cup turf. Now, the final Southern California prep for the Breeders' Cup turf took place last weekend. It was the Clement Hirsch, and in front is the former claimer, Star Over the Bay. What a claim this was by Mike Mitchell. He may be the pace setter for this year's Breeders' Cup turf. He's going to gamely hold off Seraphan to score a Grade 1 win, albeit, in my opinion, this is why you should post-grade races. This was not a Grade 1 field, but it was a very nice performance.
We can talk about that lighter topic later on. But I love this guy's way of going. And as Mark noted, he was running for a tag last year at Saratoga for $35,000.
My goodness, what a job Mike Mitchell has done with him, and Tyler Bays did a nice job. And as soon as Seraphan came to him, he kicked it in another gear, and he may very well be the pace setter in the Breeders' Cup turf. Now we're going to move to a couple of races which will showcase fillies and mares who will likely go on to the filly and mare turf on Breeders' Cup Day, beginning in New York with the Flower Bowl. And 5th between horses is the eventual winner, Risk Averse, in the purple silks with white hoops. And when Wonder Again, who is stalking in 2nd, came up absolutely empty, and I do mean empty, that threw the race wide open, and Pat Kelly and Cornelio Velasquez take advantage, and Risk Averse is going to out-finish Commerçant to score her first ever victory at 1.25 miles.
Something that we talked to Pat Kelly about last week, something that Pat Kelly was concerned with. But what a ride by Cornelio, Mark, I must say to you. And after 4 Pat Day rides, he's back in the saddle, and he just happened to win on her in the Cardinal last year, so he knows her idiosyncrasies, if you will. A couple of notes about the race. I thought Wonder Again was really hot looking before she loaded. She didn't look well. She looked very, very, very shiny, very, very, very sweaty, if you will. Pat Kelly wins his 2nd Flower Bowl. Won it with Christy Cat in 1992, and he's added the Man o' War to Turf Classic, the Queen Elizabeth, and now Risk Averse picks up another Flower Bowl for Pat Kelly, long on the grass.
And like Christy Cat, Risk Averse, a smallish filly.
Good point.
She had tried the distance 7 previous times with no success. She put it all together that day. But to me, a stunningly poor performance from Wonder Again, because the pace setup was fine. The turf was to her liking. You know, the softer, the better for Wonder Again. And the other stunning thing is that Wonder Again's trainer, Jimmy Toner, along with her owners, have decided to go to the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf and partner off that performance. That decision shocks me.
That's got me shocked too, and if I thought maybe the surprise might be not that one going, but rather the fact possibly that one of your favorites, Risk Averse, might get a second nod from Pat and take a try because she's got to win. It's another 1/8 of a mile out there, and I think that's got him concerned. But I agree with you. After the way she looked, she's going to maybe end her career at Lone Star. Maybe that's the thinking, but it's a big risk.
The long shot that I liked, Alban, who needed to race covered up. Jose Santos did do a good job getting her covered up. Unfortunately, never had any room to stretch her legs. She checked in 5th, beaten a couple of lengths, but congratulations to our old friend Pat Kelly and to Cornelio Velasquez. Nice job with Risk Averse, the upset winner of the Flower Bowl. Now, counterpart in Southern California for fillies and mares, the Yellow Ribbon. And at the top of the screen, fifth on the rail in the Yellow Ribbon is the eventual winner, Light Jig, for Bobby Frankel and Renee Douglas. And she's going to weave her way through rivals. She's going to kick in at the top of the stretch. And partner, she's about to score the second big win in her last 3 starts, and she's back on form.
I agree, and 3 of these performances at 10 furlongs, and she did. You know, she got a good inside going down the backstretch, eased out to find a way here. Good ride, pardon me, by Renee. But you know, the Juddmonte colors in races like this are just, you've always got them to be. This is a really powerful performance, Mark, and she gets her first grade win here, 3rd time going a mile and a quarter.
2 starts back, she won the Beverly Hills. As we have a 2 starts back, won the Beverly Hills. In her last race, a maybe at Del Mar, she was 7-5 and never lifted a leg. Bobby said there was something wrong with her that day. She wasn't acting right. Well, on Yellow Ribbon Day, there was nothing wrong with her.
Not at all.
She really kicked in. Interesting jockey situation. Renee Douglas for Bobby Frankel. A little bit unusual, but did a very fine job. All right. Now it's time to showcase sprinters in action, and we're going to begin with the big race in New York, the Vosburg, where number 2 Speightstown, the solid favorite. Watch what happens at the break. He's in the gold and blue silks, and he stumbles in between horses. He looked like he was coming into this race as good as a horse can be. Inside is Cajun Beat, the defending champion in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and outside, number 6 in the green silks is Pico Central, coming off a very poor performance at Del Mar when he was buried inside under pressure. This is one of the great handicapping angles, coming from inside under pressure to drawing an outside post, drawing outside of the other speed. The only question about Pico Central, could Paulo Lobo get him back in the form he showed earlier this year? And the definitive answer to that question after 3/4 of a mile is absolutely.
Mark, if you want to see the perfect example of coming into a race like this and breaking on cue, and when you're hustling like these horses are hustling, to get a horse to level and settle inside speed, you couldn't ask for it better. Now what has Paulo accomplished on another foray into New York? Well, we have the Vosburg, the Carter, and the Met Mile winner all in the same year, and we're going to take aim at the Naira Mile at the end of the year. Reminds me a bit of Langfear, who I don't think did it in the same season. I think Langfear was fall to the following spring. He's knocked down the 3 Grade 1 efforts in New York for older horses. Some people have already anointed him as the sprint champion, and depending on what happens on the big day, it might be hard to argue with that off his performances in New York this season, Mark.
Paulo Lobo has started horses in 4 Grade 1 races in New York. He has won 4 Grade 1 races in New York. That's not too shabby. Now, the big question with Pico Central is, does he go to the Breeders' Cup Sprint or does he wait for the Cigar Mile? We had our associate producer, Julie Hoxie, talk to Paulo this morning, and he said they're going to wait another 5 days to a week to make that decision. Partner, that will obviously have a dramatic effect on the Breeders' Cup Sprint, because particularly if this horse draws outside of the other speed, he rates so kindly, he could be exceptionally difficult to beat.
I tell you, it's hard for me to think about this particular decision, Mark, because, you know, I mean, look at his record in New York. He has asserted himself over the best power sprinters in the East. By the way, Speightstown still got to have the Grade 1 to make a point of argument. They're still looking for it. Had an excuse, stumbling maybe. But, you know, Mark, what if you come back to New York, win the Naira Mile, you've got this, I mean, aren't you at least in serious contention for maybe older champion as well if this happens?
I don't, you know, Michael, he's certainly in, if he comes back and wins a Cigar Mile and doesn't race in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, he's obviously in contention for Sprinter of the Year. It depends what happens
on the big day.
Because if Pleasantly Perfect or Ghost Dapper wins
there's
the Classic,
no argument there.
That's over. I mean, you know, or maybe several others. I don't know. I guess he races so well in New York that they feel it's kind of a lock to have him come here and race in the Cigar Mile. But I still think in order for him to secure or be secure of a championship, he may have to go on to the Breeders'
That's a total
Cup.
shame, in my opinion. And we'll talk about it further, I know, but I think that's a total shame. This is... nobody was a bigger admirer of Speightstown than I, okay? I have seen the best sprinting horse in New York, and in the East at least right now, and maybe North America.
Yeah.
I've seen him.
Now, we've got a major question about Speightstown. Voodoo rallied for second, and I'm not knocking Voodoo. I'd like to own him. He's a wonderful racehorse, but come on. At the upper echelon of sprinters, Voodoo rallied for second to outfinish Speightstown and Cajun Beat. I thought Speightstown's effort was really subpar. Now, did the stumble cost him? If it did, how much did it cost him? Or was it just a poor effort in an otherwise season of brilliant efforts?
Really 3 or 4 straight brilliant efforts.
Did we all overrate him?
Did we all overrate him? Or, final time I didn't write down, it was 9 and a piece. Is it possible this was not a track that he could handle on the front? I don't know.
Could be. Todd Pletcher says it is onto the Breeders' Cup Sprint with Speightstown.
Yeah, I said that, yeah.
Bobby Frankel says it's onto the Breeders' Cup Sprint with Cajun Beat. It's just that the overwhelming winner we're waiting for, and that's going to be one of the major decisions leading up to this year's Breeders' Cup. You know, on last week's show, we had 4 guests. And to say that it paid to be a guest on last week's edition of Down the Stretch may have been a minor understatement. Take a look at these statistics from last week. Pat Kelly, trainer of Risk Averse, winless in 7 prior starts at 1.25 miles. Even Pat will tell you that he questions her ability going that far. The result, she wins the Flower Bowl and $450,000. Paulo Lobo, another guest with Pico Central, coming off really a very poor third at Del Mar against a field he looked like he should drown. The result, wins the Vosburg easily and $300,000. And then there's Dale Romans with Kitten's Joy. Kitten's Joy facing his elders for the first time, going 1.5 miles for the first time. Result, he wins the Turf Classic for fun with a final quarter in 22 3 and earns $450,000. Ladies and gentlemen, none of them were favored, and the winner's share of the purses, $1,200,000. That doesn't include the $50,000 Evening Attire got for 4th in the Gold Cup. That's just tip money at this point for Pat Kelly. And Michael Matz, remember I told you Kick and Chris came on the track with front bandages. That was not good, but he earned a few dollars. But it did pay to be a guest on Down the Stretch.
And I would just like to humbly admit in front of you that your co-host, who's a part of this program and loves doing the interviews, had no part of the pick 4 with my wagers last week. So I'll learn.
One other race of note occurred yesterday at Keeneland, where a pair of old rivals ran 1-3 in the Phoenix Breeders' Cup. Number 7 is Champ Alley. He is stalking on the outside in the white silks with a green shamrock. He's going to outfinish the pace setter number 1 Gold Storm, while the favorite number 10 Clock Stopper in the Overbrook silks is in behind horses rallying, and he's going to hesitate going between horses for Pat Day. Going to find traffic. Pat's going to have to angle out. He's going to run 3rd. But Champ Alley, who beat Clock Stopper earlier in the year in the Smile Sprint, beats him again for Rafael Bejarano.
Isn't this what Steady Eddie means? I mean, you know, he was a little bit on the Derby Trail last year at Turfway, I remember him. Now he's gone back to 6 furlong sprints, and in the 7 times he's gone short, he has a 4-1-2 record, and he's a tough customer going 6 furlongs. He just always runs his race.
Champ Alley was coming off a subpar performance. He had run 3rd against weak rivals in the Arlington Sprint Championship. Well, trainer Greg Foley did a very, very nice job, and he responds, and he will likely go to the Breeders' Cup Sprint, as will apparently the second finisher, Gold Storm, who was inside under pressure every step of the way and ran a very, very fine second. And Dallas Stewart says that the Clock Stopper is going to go on to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So the first 3 finishers. Now here we go again with an analysis of the sprint division. Remember, Clock Stopper had run a bang-up second behind Speightstown in the A.G. Vanderbilt.
He was at Saratoga, yeah.
If we're overrating Speightstown, did we overrate Clock Stopper? This is going to be a fascinating Breeders' Cup Sprint, and the key may very well be Paulo Lobo with Pico Central. All right, we are up to our next break on this morning's special edition of Down the Stretch from here at the Albany Teletheater. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, there is plenty more to do. We are going to take a look at a pair of prep races for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. We're going to take a look at a pair of prep races for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. The combination of those two races may have changed the betting favorite for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies.
I say let it.
So we'll take a look at those. Going to take a look at an absolutely outstanding performance in the Norfolk in a final prep for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Then we'll welcome in our final guest, Mr. Ken McPeek. Ken, later this afternoon, will saddle Diamond Isle, a little-known colt from Buckram Oak, who will be contesting the Breeders' Futurity. I happened to catch Diamond Isle's maiden race, or maiden victory, at Churchill earlier this year, and I was impressed. And Ken gave him some time off, didn't come to Saratoga, ran him in the Cradle Stakes off a long layoff, and ran pretty well.
He did.
Ran a pretty good second, and he's preparing him for this afternoon's Breeders' Futurity. So I think he's a fascinating colt, and you'll get a good look at him, and Michael had a nice interview with Ken about that. So we've got a lot more coming up in looking at the Breeders' Cup Distaff, races leading up to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, and the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So a lot more coming up, all right after these messages.
This is the OTB Television Network.
We tried telling you nicely.
Get with the program.
Then we got a little bolder.
Get with the program.
Now we're practically shouting.
Get with the program. New York bred.
And here are some of the reasons why. New York bred race for purses and incentives exceeding $40 million. New York bred yearling prices have risen significantly, bucking the national trend. The New York Stallion Stakes Series has expanded to 8 races worth a combined $1.25 million. New York bred restricted stakes have grown from $75,000 to $100,000 at both Belmont and Saratoga. And they're doing okay in open company.
And the gutsy gelding Funny Side has won the 129th Kentucky Derby.
Isn't it time for you to get with the program, the New York Breeding and Racing Program?
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark Asano, live from here at the Albany Teletheater at 711 Central Avenue. And again, just a reminder, if you haven't gotten your reservations for Breeders' Cup Day in 3 weeks, why don't you give Maureen a call here at the Teletheater and get yourself a reserved table. And you know, it's going to be interesting because as we went to the break, when I made mention of the fact that the combination of the Oakleaf and the Alcibiades may have created a new favorite for the Breeders' Cup, my partner said,
I say let it.
Are you going to pick every Patrick Biancone trained horse in
and
the
I'll
Breeders'
explain
Cup?
why when I
Please.
get the chance, if I get the chance.
Got
you
it.
know.
I went
You
by.
know, these preconceived notions here that I have to deal with.
I
so.
went by you in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic like you were tied to the 8th ball.
I'll take him again.
Okay, a couple of races as preps for the upcoming Breeders' Cup Distaff, and we're going to begin at Philadelphia Park with a cotillion, and rallying on the outside is a shadow for Todd Pletcher. In my opinion, she's the leader of the 3-year-old filly division.
Interesting remark, yeah, okay.
And partner,
yeah.
she went to the cotillion for one reason and one reason only. It fit her schedule perfectly. The spot that the cotillion held on the calendar was absolutely ideal as far as Todd Pletcher was concerned. She's supposed to drown this field. Did she get enough out of this?
Well, I think she did, and I agree with you that I think she's the leader, and you know, in what amounted to a public workout in 141 and 3, and we're going to see the time come up in a moment, I think, but if not, I went to the book to look this up, Mark. There's your 141 and 3, and I was quite surprised at what I found in the history of the cotillion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the cotillion has been a really, really decent sophomore filly race for its history. I mean, here are some of the winners. Chuvie, Hall of Fame, Susan's Girl, Hall of Fame, Revedier, Alma North, Sugar and Spice. I believe a few years ago, our friend John Service, did Jostle go down and win this race?
Yes.
I think she did on the
Yes, I believe
So that's
she
a
did.
pretty good group of horses. Well, all a shadow did in her public workout was set a new stakes record and outrun all of those at a mile and a 16th. So she's fit and ready to go. She's a workhorse.
Todd got out of it what he wanted.
I agree.
And this was no surprise that he went to the cotillion. When I interviewed Todd at Saratoga, leading up to the Alabama, we talked about the summer into fall schedule at the New York Racing Association. And the fact that if you run in the Alabama at a mile and a quarter, where do you go next? Todd didn't want to run back quickly in the Gazelle. I mean, you know, unless you're Wayne Lucas, nobody's going to go from the Alabama to the Gazelle. It's too quick. Todd didn't want to wait for the Beldame because it's only 3 weeks from the Breeders' Cup. So he told me at that time, the cotillion is perfect on the calendar. So that was something that was well planned, and it was, I think, a wonderful
This
prep.
is really finely tuned. I agree.
All right. Now, one prep in Southern California for the Breeders' Cup Distaff, the running of the Ladies' Secret Breeders' Cup. The favorite in here was Summer Wind Dancer. Well, she was no factor. At the top of your screen, you're going to see rallying 3 wide the eventual winner, Island Fashion. Remember, she was second earlier this year in the Big Cap? Elo Love is number 4, inside with the white blinkers. Island Fashion is outside with the white blinkers. And Island Fashion for Marcelo Polanco is going to put away Elo Love and then hold off a big close by Miss Lauren to win the Ladies' Secret.
Mark, what I'd really like to say is oftentimes we hear the phrase short horse, and for those of our audience that's watching, you are absolutely watching what it means to win as a class short horse. She desperately needed this race. She hadn't been out since the 6th of June. She saved all the ground going into the first turn, came out willingly for the second half mile. Very, very nice job. Kerwin John, the rider, did a very, very nice job on her. But don't forget, we're looking at the winner of the Alabama Stakes here who comes back. But again, I think the point I'd like to make is, in this circumstance, when you read or hear someone say she won like a short horse, that was visually exactly what it looks like.
Now, we have to kind of grade the Ladies' Secret. How good was that field? I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but you just saw Miss Lauren rally off dead fractions. I think it's amazing she ran second.
I don't disagree
How far
with
back
that.
she was in dead fractions. Remember, Miss Lauren in the Ruffian at Belmont Park finished third, nearly 14 lengths behind Sightseek and Pocus Hocus. Now, maybe Miss Lauren didn't like the racetrack, or maybe Sightseek is a monster compared to the fillies and mares in Southern California.
That pretty much sums it up. I mean, I don't know where to place Miss Lauren here because I didn't expect much either. She clearly is a tough filly to be doing what she's doing in such a short space of time. But I think Mark's drawn the distinction as to where the class level is. On the other hand, Island Fashion is the real deal.
She is.
She really is the real deal.
She's a hard-knocking filly. She's a very, very nice filly. Now, speaking of fillies, a couple of prep races for 2-year-old fillies. Earlier in the program, I said I felt Kitten's Joy in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic was the performance of the weekend. This one ranks right up there as we take a look at the Oak Leaf. 6th at the top of your screen is the second choice, Sweet Catamine. After this eye-catching performance, she might be the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Julio Canani's got a nice one. She had the outside post. She was wide in the first turn. Take a look at this run she's making. And folks, this is only her 3rd lifetime start. When a baby makes a run like this, more times than not, they're going to flatten out or hang in the stretch. She didn't do that. I thought this was a wonderful performance.
It really was, and I tell you, you know, this is between the 4 and the 3 furlongs. She begins this. I don't like to say word monster move for a 2-year-old filly, but that's exactly what it is. Let's keep in mind she won the Grade 1 Del Mar Debutante as a maiden. This is a visually awesome performance. I think Mark is right. This is going to be the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly favorite off this performance. I would like to make just a footnote to this race. I watched it a couple of times after it was run. I watched the tape a few times, and I would like to point out we will not see Splendid Blended from Neil Drysdale on Juvenile Fillies Day, but I got to tell you, if you watch this race a couple of times, you're going to see a truly remarkable performance by a filly who was wide, rank, green, looking all over the place, and still managed to run a very good performance.
Not much in here. Splendid Blended, Michael just mentioned, was the betting favorite off strictly a maiden win. But Sweet Catamine, who is now 2 for 3 lifetime, she won the Del Mar Debutante. you saw her win the Oakleaf. The only time she got beat was in a maiden sprint. And Julio Canani says she's not very good sprinting. She wants to go long. That was her first time 2 turns. And I thought it was an absolutely brilliant performance. And depending on the post position on Breeders' Cup Day, they're going to have their running shoes on to beat Sweet Catamine.
No.
That was a very, very good performance. Now, one other prep race for the juvenile fillies, and this occurred yesterday on opening day at Keeneland. It featured Sense of Style, the brilliant 2-year-old filly from Patrick Biancone. The race is the Alcibiades. As we pick it up, Sense of Style is inside in behind. Edgar Prado wanted to save ground. That's great to do at Keeneland, but you better find room. And she never found room. And Nick Zito's In the Gold is going to make the front, but she's going to be run down on the outside by number 8 Runway Model, and ducking to the inside number 7 Sharp Lisa, and the odds-on favorite Sense of Style is 5th in a performance that was unexpected. The reason I say unexpected, partner, she handled the 2 turns fine. I just couldn't believe she ended up running 5th.
Well, the winner, first of all, let's give some credit to the winner. She's a hard-knocking young filly, although she went on Lasix for the first time in 8 starts. But I've got a pretty strong feeling, Mark, about Sense of Style. You know, Prado made what looked like a clever move to the inside early to save ground, saved all the ground. Sense of Style is moving and traveling beautiful. For probably a full quarter of a mile, she is fighting him because she does have nowhere to go. And I have a very strong feeling she just simply nearly got stopped cold and just couldn't handle the circumstance thrown at her. I'm not surprised she finished 5th at all. And the reason I made the remark earlier is because I think she's going to be a few dollars higher on Breeders' Cup Juveniles Fillies days. I'm assuming Biancone going to persevere with her. I didn't think she ran bad at all, but obviously seeing her finish 5th, wow. We'll go back and watch it a couple of times. You know, for the first 7 of the 8.5 furlong race, she's moving what you want. Unfortunately, Edgar's clever move becomes a disastrous mistake at Keeneland.
The winner, Runway Model, making her 8th career start for Bernie Flint. First time Lasix. She was 2nd in the Arlington, Washington Lassie in last, which probably moves up the prospect of Culinary, who won that race in Chicago. Runway Model at the last minute got Rafael Bejarano. He won both stakes on the opening day card at Keeneland. The filly who ran 2nd is pretty interesting. Sharp Lisa had run exactly 1 race prior to the Alcibiades. It was a 5.5 furlong sprint at Calder, where she won by 6.5 lengths. She was sent to Doug O'Neill on the West Coast, brought her here. Corey Nakatani had the mount, and partner for her 2nd career start. She ran bang up.
Grade 2 place.
She really did.
Possibly, you know, one of the winners. Absolutely, I agree.
But Edgar took the chance, took the risks to save ground, which at times is really critical at Keeneland. But a hole never opened up, and she never got a chance to run. Patrick Biancone told everybody going into the Alcibiades, I'm not going to have her particularly sharp. I'm going to have her much sharper for the Breeders' Cup. It wasn't the sharpness or the lack thereof that got her beat. It was strictly the trip.
I happen to agree with that.
All right.
I do.
One more race for 2-year-olds. This for the males, and we're going to go back to Southern California for the running of the Norfolk. And stalking in 2nd is the 1 to 20 favorite in the Norfolk. This is Roman Ruler. They put blinkers on him. And he was a little bit, I don't want to say rank, but he was a little bit headstrong early. But he settled down for Corey Nakatani down the backside. I told you last week I thought he could be 1 to 20. He's got absolutely nothing to beat here, but he sure looked good beating him.
Slight difference of opinion between Mark and Mike on this one. I thought that he was anxious acting going into the first turn, which we did not see here. I might even call him rank. I don't see a horse with a lot of punch coming home. Granted, the race is over, and maybe he's losing some interest. I don't know what to make of this as far as 2 races back when he looked so devastating. But simply maybe by the same token, Baffert maybe hasn't got him cranked all the way, Mark. He is, well, depending upon what we see in New York, he may be the favorite in his race. However, I did read in the interval, and I did not know this, and I don't know how much of our audience knows this. This is a Ridgeling, and he has an undescended testicle. He may, in fact, have a discomfort level that he's dealing
Okay.
with. And so that may explain some of the things that I just referred to.
He was beaten in the neck by Dylan's Moon in the Del Mar Futurity, and somewhat unusual after runaway victories in his first 2 starts, and really a very fine second to Declan's Moon in the Del Mar Futurity. They added blinkers. And, you know, that's somewhat of an unusual situation because he was running so well.
Yeah.
And while we disagree on parts of the race, I did mention that he was headstrong going into the first turn. I thought he settled better going down the backside. I personally hope he's the favorite for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, because I think later today in New York, we may see a monster in New York later this afternoon. Okay. All the 2-year-old races, all the prep races from the weekend past, all with Breeders' Cup implications. A race later this afternoon with Breeders' Cup implications will be the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland for 2-year-old males. And our final guest this morning has got an interesting colt in there by the name of Diamond Isle. And earlier, Mike had a chance to sit down and chat with the trainer of Diamond Isle, Mr. Ken McPeek.
Ken, you know, Diamond Isle's sire is Gilded Time, and seem to recall him as being a, you know, beautiful, muscular chestnut horse, but quite a handful. He was ranked in some of the races early and took the turns wide. Talk a little bit about Diamond Isle's temperament. Is any of that eagerness in him?
No, actually, he's a very laid-back colt, very easy to handle, has shown a world of class to be around, and now, he actually, I think he physically is more like a distance horse than he is a sprinter. I think the speed influence of Gilded Time is good, but I think he probably favors more the Polish Navy on the bottom line.
Yeah, and that is a deep bottom line. There's no question about that. How did he train coming up to his first starts, Ken? How did he take to his early training?
Well, you know, I don't normally crank horses up for their first race. He ran 5 furlongs first time out in the slop there at Churchill, and it was a decent race. And he got hung a little wide, and he ran a good third, and then he came back the next race and just pounced on him and won easily the next start, and we were quite impressed with that. But, you know, all along we've been pointing to a fall campaign. I chose not to bring him to New York for the summer because I felt like he'd be better off if we just looked for some route races and then just kind of trained him and tried to teach him to do the two turns, and we're hoping to progress forward from this start.
Ken, you did indeed answer my next question. You skipped Saratoga Summer, and you were looking for something like the Cradle, presumably. You didn't consider any other Midsummer Stakes race, is that correct?
No, none whatsoever. The whole time was, I told Mr. Fustock, the owner of Buckermoke Farm, I said, his first race back, if we can get him 2 turns, the sooner the better. I said, we will, first race back should be a good race, second race back should be a better race, and the third should be his best.
I'm following your sequence, Ken.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, the Cradle was his stakes debut, and Ken, tell our audience a little bit about that comeback off the summer vacation, as it were, and how'd you think he did that day at Turfway?
Well, we trained him right there at Churchill. You know, basically, you know, got the good bottom under him, and you know, plenty of long gallops for it, and he ran good. You know, the race was a little unusual in that there was a very slow first half mile on it, and the horse Bellamy Road ran a tremendous race, and he's a very impressive horse to see. But we were gaining ground on him there in the lane, and you know. All in all, I was very pleased. You know, that was one of the fastest Cradles run in 9 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Some very good horses have come out of that race. Harlan's Holiday won that race for us. I won it with Deputy Warlock. Tahana Run was second. You had a horse named Peaks and Valleys who won the race. That almost, well, I guess 17, 18, 19 years ago, Spindabuck won that race.
That's right, yeah.
So it is a very, very good race. It's somewhat, because it's in the Midwest, it's kind of tucked away from the rest of the world sometimes. But I think this year's group was as good a group as we've seen in years, and the first 3 finishers were pretty stellar.
Oh, that is interesting to hear, Ken. Ken, in the Lane's End, Pat Day will replace Brice Blanc. Comment on the jockey switch?
Well, more than anything, you know, Mr. Fustock had asked me about that, and you know, Pat he's a legend, and you know, we wanted to get somebody that was ready to hopefully win the Breeders' Cup with this horse, and nothing against Brice has done a wonderful job for me for a long time. Obviously, I'd love to have him on the horse at the same time. We all have to make these calls. Hey, Lauren, I've been changed a few times, too. So, anyway.
I think we've been through that on the show, Ken, actually, as a matter of fact.
That's okay. But we all work hard. But anyway, Pat's going to be given a shot on the horse, and, it's going to be fun. Going to give him every chance. And at Keeneland, there isn't anybody better than to have Pat Day on your horse.
Ken, a question that's been on my mind for a couple of years, and I've written about it somewhat. I'd like to get your opinion on something, if you don't mind. It seems to me in the last few years there's been a small, but maybe I might call it a growing concern amongst horsemen that, this rushing to get to the Breeders' Cup, particularly with juveniles in the fall, has kind of maybe impacted important fall races at tracks. I think there's beginning to be some griping about the loss of prestige for other races. Do you have a feeling about that one way? Are we asking a lot, or is the Breeders' Cup, just going along just great?
Oh, it's going along fine. It's all timing with these horses. Some horses that win a lot of the sprint races, they don't route well. Okay, that's normal. Okay, horses develop and change over time. No, I think it's a great conclusion to the year, and I think the timing of it's good. And our goal from a trainer's perspective, our goal is to time it right. And there's only one of us that's going to be right.
Good point. Yeah.
All the rest are going to be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're going to gripe, there's only one person that doesn't have a gripe, and that's the guy that wins the race.
Yeah.
So anyway, you got to take the bad with the good, and just hope that you time it right. And we almost timed this right with Repent.
That's right.
I skipped all the preps because I thought the horse needed a little more time, and he ran great in the Breeders' Cup. Got beat by Johannesburg, and nobody paid any attention to him. He was 43-1. And if you want to make him champion, you got to time it right. So hopefully we can do it with this one.
Ken, earlier this year we talked to you about a real good turf runner named Hardbuck. Would you talk to our audience and kind of update us on where Hardbuck has been and what his future might be?
Hardbuck, he came back from England, and did you see that race?
I'm not sure that we did, Ken.
Well, he ran second in the King George,
which
we probably can't appreciate it. It's a very important English race, and he ran a great race over there. He came back from the race a little bit tired. We shipped him back into Saratoga. I thought I was going to make a couple of the races in summer, late summer, early fall. He needed weight. In the meantime, I sent him to the farm. We've given him a rest. He's been galloping every day. He's doing fantastic right now. Original plan was going to be the Canadian International. I'm about a week, 10 days behind schedule for that race, and I don't know if I'm going to make it or not, and I'm not willing to force it. My backup race is the race in New York called the Knickerbocker. So you may very well see him in New York. It's the 30th of October. It's Breeders' Cup Day.
That's right. Yes.
So right now, if I had to say, he's about 75% sure he's going to run in the Knickerbocker.
Oh, good.
There in New York. And then he's going to Japan and Hong Kong for the Japan Cup and the Hong Kong Cup.
Yes.
That will be his year. I've basically just been trying to gear him around the Japan Cup, Hong Kong Cup. And then we'll probably put him on the shelf for the rest of the year and then point him to probably the Dubai World Cup again.
Okay. Well, listen, Ken, as always, on behalf of Down the Stretch and our audience, it's a real pleasure to talk with you. Good luck in the Lane's End Futurity, my man.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, Ken. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Ken McPeek, the trainer of Diamond Dial in the Grade 1 Lane's End Futurity at Keeneland.
Ken McPeek, ladies and gentlemen, and one of the things I like about talking with Kenny is he's got a sense of humor. Here's a guy who did, very, very good jobs with certain racehorses, Harlan's Holiday,
wins the Belmont Stakes,
and he loses those horses to other trainers, and he's got a sense of humor about it. Now, good question about Hardbuck. we'll look for him in the Knickerbocker here in New York. But this Diamond Isle he's got for this afternoon, this could be interesting. And in fact, let's take a look at the field for this afternoon's Lanes End Breeders' Futurity. And I think it's a fascinating field for a number of reasons. First of all, it's the Lanes End Breeders' Futurity. Number 10, Patriot Act, is owned by William Farish and trained by Neil Howard. William Farish, of course, of Lanes End. Now, that in itself is not unusual, but ladies and gentlemen, Patriot Act is a maiden. And have you ever seen this from Neil Howard?
This is, you know, Neil, for the benefit of our audience, when we talk about lining up guests, we kind of figure we have to deal with an ultra-conservative trainer and work out a question that'll get him to commit to something that he ordinarily wouldn't. Here he is in a grade 1 with a maiden. This may be from him. Let me put it this way. I have not ever seen it following Neil Howard. I'll say it that way.
And the line maker makes the maiden 6 to 1,
in front of some of
and he makes Scipion 10 to 1. I'll let you talk about Scipion because it's a bee and cone horse.
Yeah, wait a minute.
You know, when he broke his maiden at Saratoga, coming from the clouds, everybody said to me that's the greatest performance they ever saw. Mark, what did you think about it? And I said, I think he's going to get beaten his next start. And they looked at me like I was completely out of my mind. He got beaten his next start. He draws outside today, which everybody likes. I don't like post 11 at Keeneland. I think I can beat him again today.
Well, as opposed to my normally cynical partner when it comes to handicapping things, I was not captivated by the maiden victory because of the victory itself, as I remember saying to certain people, and I think Mark was one of them. I was amazed that he even finished the race after his antics pre-race in the paddock. I think he's a very special horse. I have been up there, seen him a couple times. Look, this is a great, big, lazy baby. That's all there is to it. Today is not the target, okay? 3 weeks from today is the target. He's better than what he showed in the cradle, but we'll have to see. But at 10 to 1, if you think your partner isn't going to take a couple dollars out on a chance on a horse he likes, yeah, this is, besides the two we've talked about, a really fascinating addition of this. This Arlington horse is unbeaten. I can't throw him out at all. He's got a good pedigree. That's for down the road.
Now, who are you talking about?
A 3-hour nap.
Okay.
He's shown a lot of courage out there. Kenny McPeek horse, I agree. And look at Michael Dickinson. We don't know how good Bellamy Road is. He just ran away with the cradle, and I expect him to run very big again today.
Folks, I'm hoping that those handicappers taking a look at the cradle stakes where Bellamy Road and Diamond Isle ran 1-2 will downgrade those performances because of the pace scenario. I mean, they got a half mile in 49-2 that day off an opening quarter in 25-1. I think Bellamy Road and Diamond Isle are both going to come back and run well, particularly Bellamy Road. I think this is a nice colt. He broke his maiden sprinting when he attended a quicker pace, then stretching out, it was a conservative pace. He gets Ramon Dominguez this afternoon. You heard Ken McPeek say Diamond Isle is going to be much tighter, much better today. But I think they've all got to beat Bellamy Road in this afternoon's Breeders' Futurity. That's only one of the stakes races on this absolutely terrific weekend, the final major weekend of racing leading up to the Breeders' Cup. Let's take a look at all of the major stakes racing action over the next 48 hours. Now, folks, these are the major stakes races. There are other stakes races involved. You know, Keeneland's got the Sycamore going, what, a mile and a half?
Yep.
But, you know, that's not going to have Breeders' Cup
Probably
implications.
won't produce one, yeah.
Today in New York, take a look at these 4 stakes. The Beldame, the Kelso, the Champagne, and the Frisette. Ladies and gentlemen, the Beldame, as I told you a couple of weeks ago, I think this is going to mark the final career start of Sightseek. She's on a racetrack where not only has she never been beaten, they haven't come close to her. And you've got Society Selection, Alan Jerkins, what a phenomenal job he did with her over wet tracks at Saratoga. You've got Storm Flag Flying. Shug McGahee says he's got her the best he's ever had her. But I'll tell you what, I have no idea how they're going to beat Sightseek.
You know, Shug doesn't make those remarks very often either, and we all were sort of pumping him all summer long to make a remark that he finally made in the first week of October. If that's the case, this is a filly who will take it to Sightseek for a while. How long that lasts, I really don't know. Society Selection would benefit from such a scenario. The long shot from Jimmy Bond, Nevermore ran very good in her last out, but it is just a high-class event, and I do think that if Sightseek wins today, that's It's the last race of her career.
The Kelso on the proper surface, not the greatest field ever, but you know what? It's a terrific betting event. I'm going to give you you don't often use the term long shot or value with Pletcher and Velasquez. Willard Straight has never faced this kind before. But 1 mile is absolutely right up his alley. And I think he's got a shot to upset this afternoon's Kelso. Then we've got the 2-year-old races. In the Champagne, it features the undefeated Fleet Alex. Tim Ritchie has done, partner, a wonderful, wonderful job with him. But I am a huge Proud Accolade. I love the way this horse looks. I love the way he races. He is still green as the grass at Augusta National, but man, is he a package of talent. Got a perfect outside post this afternoon, and even though Todd said he's not as good for this afternoon Champagne as I hope to have him for the Breeders' Cup, I like Proud Accolade in this afternoon Champagne.
I know you like him. I'm going to take a guy, and I mean, I have a question about a Fleet Alex being prime 6.5 to 8.5 on this particular day. I was impressed by Rick Violet's Wall Street Scandals stakes debut in the Futurity. He's been a mile at Belmont Park, training very well, and I spoke to Rick while he was up here for the sale, and he says the thing I'm going with is his very, very good mind. I'll take a shot there.
And we've got the Frisette for 2-year-old fillies. Boleto, who I like very much. We had Tommy Albertrani on the show a few weeks ago. She draws the inside, may not be the ideal spot, but unlike the Matron, when it was a paceless race, I think there's going to be plenty of pace in this afternoon's Frisette. I've got the Frisette between number 1 Boleto and number 8 Reddy's Gal for the aforementioned Todd Pletcher. She's done absolutely nothing wrong, and she draws a perfect outside post.
A race I'm just going to watch and enjoy because I think Boleto is much the best. I'm going to spend no money here today.
And at Keeneland, in addition to the Breeders' Futurity, we had the Shadwell Turf Mile, which is a wide open race. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Shadwell, I think the best horse in the race is number 9, Nothing to Lose. But it's a horrible post position, and they're going from John Velasquez to Robbie Alvarado. No knock on Robbie Alvarado, but John Velasquez, one of the 3 finest grass riders in North America. Nothing to Lose set a beautiful inside trip last time in the 4-star Dave. Now must overcome the outside post. So while I like Nothing to Lose, this may be the day to try to beat him. The 2 horses who I think have the best shots of beating him, number 7, Perfect Soul, who's never been beaten over the Keeneland Turf Course, and number 4, Silver Tree, who goes from Bailey to Pat Day. That's a little bit of a negative as far as grass goes, but Silver Tree's got post 4, and Nothing to Lose has got post 9. I think that could make a difference.
I think as our comparisons went earlier in the show, and the handicap division is how do we rank thus the sus A to B to C, I think Perfect Soul finished second to a truly outstanding miler last time in Soaring Free. He's back at Keeneland with Prado. He's 3 for 3. In my mind, he's not the same as he was last year, but maybe this perks him up going back there this afternoon.
And the biggest race tomorrow, the Overbridge Spencer featuring Azeri. So there's a look at the weekend stakes action. We want to thank Caruso's Custom Clothiers for supplying the blazers that we are wearing on this morning's Down the Stretch, and you see them on the other shows on this network. Caruso's on Western Avenue in Albany. Give them a call at 464-6097. Time to thank all the folks who got this week's remote edition of Down the Stretch on the air. Back in Schenectady, Dan Hayes directed, Dino Cantonacci on audio. Here at the Teletheater, our associate producer Julie Hoxie, Jim Barber, Pat Peretta on cameras, Mark Wells. Thanks to Brian Dorenzo and Paul Cataldo helping set up everything. Thanks to Peter Persico for helping with the Open. A lot of people involved in getting this show on the air each and every week. Next week, I'm going to miss you. Off next week.
Well, I'll be here in spirit, no pun intended. But I might see you for some taping early in the week.
So have a good weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy this outstanding weekend of stakes action from coast to coast. Have a great weekend and a terrific upcoming week. And Michael and I will see you next week.